Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Wormeli. I'm joined today by Andrew Erickson and by Chris Welsh. Fellas, we are extending our predictions show into the NFL playoffs. It is Wild Card Weekend. Is it still Super Wild Card Weekend? I feel like I haven't seen them say Super, and I know it used to be. I actually don't remember. We're calling it Wild Card Weekend. We've got a really fun slate of 6 games here. Erickson, how do you feel now that the regular season, is officially behind us?
I feel like my brain is functioning at a normal capacity now, which I very much enjoy, where I can kind of just stop working at night and let my brain kind of reset as opposed to doing the 12,000 other things I have to do in season. So I feel like I'm thinking more clearly. So hopefully with less games to kind of parse through, I will have better predictions because, as we'll get into, it's just not been my show so far this year. It's been tough with the prediction street. So looking to get better with only 6 games to break down.
I feel like you were really accurate when we did this show last year. So I'm not sure what's happened this year where you've really fallen off a cliff.
I ruined you. I ruined Erickson.
Welsh has gotten, he's not gotten his stink on you. He's stolen it. He's taken, it's like the Monstars stealing your talent because Welsh has been kind of on fire. Welsh, how you feeling, buddy, now that we're past week 18 and into the playoffs?
Oh, I don't have to watch the Niners anymore. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to do any of that. I don't have to experience a week 18 again. Boof. Week 18. Ridiculous to try to consume. Just you have to re-ask yourself sometimes, why do you bet on week 18? Why do you consume all of it? Thank God we're going to go into the playoffs, and hopefully this super duper exciting wild card weekend is going to have some big payoffs. There's some good games though. Part of the narrative we talked about earlier in the week too was a little bit of chalk. There's kind of some chalk. Like you look and it's hard to envision a handful of games that are going to have these big setups or upsets, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm really excited to break down the slate, honestly. This weekend and next weekend, I'm not the first person to say this, but just are 2 of the best weekends of football and sports of the entire calendar, where you get, Saturday, Sunday, pretty much all day watching playoff games. Erickson, you did better in week 18 than you had the last couple of weeks. Now, that was an extraordinarily low bar to clear. You were wrong about the Steelers and Jaylen Warren. You were wrong about Tony Pollard. He did get 22 rushes, but he didn't get his needed 83 yards. He did not get any of the 2 touchdowns.
They tried.
Not only did Carson Wentz not throw a touchdown pass to DeAndre Hopkins, he didn't throw touchdown passes to anybody. It was a 38-0 loss to Denver. However, you were right about the Jags, mostly, spiritually correct. And also, of course, you were correct about Brian Thomas Jr. in that game, officially getting the leading all rookies in receiving this season. So that was a big hit by you. And of course, the big one, you were spot on about Geno Smith and the Seahawks. Those incentives played off really well for you. Welsh, you had Michael Penix did get his 2 touchdown day, but all his passing did go to Drake London instead of Kyle Pitts. So thankfully, almost Pitts finished the season with another whimper. We don't have to be tricked into going for him next year. J.K. Dobbins did not get 100 yards, but he did get 63 against the Raiders for the incentives there. Brock Bowers got 9 targets, but only came down with 4 passes. Not the big day we expected from Jameson Williams. And finally, Mike Evans did not get his 100 yards, but of course he did get his 1,000-yard season, which was really one of the highlights of the day, seeing the whole sideline celebrate. And I'm not here for the people who are like, the defense was soft, they were kind of letting him have it. It was cool to see. The dude's a Hall of Famer. He missed a bunch of games this year. The game was already over. It's not like they took a loss to give it to him. And they didn't guide him down the field. It was maybe a little softer coverage.
Rizzy said after the game that they tried to double cover Mike Evans on that play.
Yeah, I don't think it was any kind of intentional.
He clearly knew where the ball was going.
Yeah,
you
couldn't have been able to tell. Can I ask you guys real quick? I got massive pushback on this on Out of Bounds this week from Bogman and Pisapia, but I think if you watch the game, Mike Evans was just, let's just say better word, he's pouting. And I get it. It's $3 million. It was the drive before. I think they had just scored he was sitting on the bench, just staring off into the abyss. No excitement, no nothing, no anything. Then they get the ball back. He goes back in. He's cold, gets the catch. He's super excited. He just leaves. And I was like, okay, what's going on here? But my take was they were going to pay. They were going to pay him. I don't know if they would have paid him the full $3 million. I can't imagine if he came up 5 yards short that organization was not going to take care of him in some capacity. And this is to do with his level of kind of poutiness. They completely disagreed. And I think you might hurt the relationship a little bit with this guy who would be like the face of the organization moving forward, Hall of Famer. If 5 yards short, they didn't pay him out in some capacity. Do you guys think I'm way off on that?
Well, was he pouting because he wasn't going to? So
he was 5 yards short. He was sitting. It's not about the pouting. He was absolutely just like despondent, sitting on the bench, going 5 yards short. My thing was, you should be excited. You should keep going. You guys are making the playoffs. You did great. And do we really think that they would have just been like, oh, better luck next time, buddy? Like, you fell 5 yards short.
It totally depends on the owner. I don't know enough about Tampa's ownership team and family to know if they're the type that would try nickel and dime him. But like, you would think any reasonably competent owner would recognize like this dude is a Hall of Famer, maybe a first ballot Hall of Famer. He spent his entire career here and fell short, from this legendary streak. Like, yeah, I would like to think they would have paid him.
Wait, but Evans already hit his receptions incentive before that.
No, he needed all three of them to lock in the $5 million. He needed all. There wasn't one individual. It was all a collective. He needed the catches, the touchdowns, and the yards to collect the $3 million. So he was sitting on the bench 5 yards short of $3 million because he didn't have those yards. And they had just scored that touchdown. And he was just kind of sitting there away from his teammates, staring off into the abyss. And I get it. It's $3 million and stuff like that. But it was so disconnected from the team. And then just for me, he gets it. He celebrates and he just leaves. And he just walks off the field. And I was like, what's going on here? And then, top it off at the end. He's like, I'm going to go to the casino. And I was like, all right. I'm like disliking Mike Evans. I was like rooting for him. It was the coolest moment ever, but I'm like, I don't like any of this. But I just couldn't get over the poutiness and like, dude, they got to take care of you. I guess, and to your point, there are nickel and dime ownerships that would have just laughed in their face and not paid it off. And, there are teams that bench players and stuff like, I just don't think you would have done that for the face of the Buccaneers. He's the number one face of that organization, and it'll be for a long time moving forward. If it meant that much to him, I can't imagine they would have not paid him out. So it was more about like, why are you pouting so much? I understand the money, but you should get taken care of.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Let's jump into the wild card slate and see if we can get our own streaks going here again. We're gonna start with we're just gonna go kind of chronologically here. So we're gonna start with Chargers Texans. This is the 4-5 game. In the AFC, Texans in their annual time slot of 3:30 local Saturday. Every single playoff game they've been in the last, I think it's 12 years or whatever it is, has been in the same time slot. So this is definitely the Texans Invitational. Erickson, what is your big prediction for Chargers Texans?
The Chargers are going to win because the Texans are fraudulent, and this is where they always lose. Saturday, wild card weekend in the late afternoon slate. I just have memories of it being kind of like, it's dark outside. The Texans are on in the background. I look up, they're getting killed. And that's basically what's going to happen here in this matchup. I just think that all year long, the Texans have been one of the most overrated teams. And we've seen it from the lack of offensive efficiency. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL overall in overall success rate, like next to the Cleveland Browns, who have played 4 different quarterbacks all year long. So I think this is more of the same. And again, if this was the Chargers of old, the Harbaugh Chargers, this would be a really easy game to be, this is where the Texans, they get a win, right? But it's not. It's the Harbaugh Chargers. We've seen this team over this past season really take what Harbaugh brought to the table and run with it and be pretty successful in his first year, make the postseason in his first year as the head coach. So I think the quarterback advantage is with the Chargers. I think that the coaching advantage is with the Chargers. So yeah, they're playing on the road, but the Chargers play on the road every single week because they play at SoFi Stadium, which is essentially a road game. So I like them to win this game. And I think that Joe Mixon is going to kind of continue his late season struggles. We're starting to see some of these veteran running backs kind of run out of gas with the end of the season. He's rushed for under 70 rushing yards in 5 of his last 7 games. He's actually played a full allotment of snaps, so that's not even counting last week where he barely played. So his prop is around 72.5 rushing yards this week. I think he's going to finish under 72.5 rushing yards. And there's a chance that after Dameon Pierce popped off last week, maybe let's go with this 2-man backfield that they kept talking up the entire offseason. But we're going to have a 2-headed monster with Dameon Pierce and Joe Mixon, which they never did. So who knows? With Joe Mixon kind of slowing down, maybe Pierce gets a little bit more involved. So just kind of fading the Texans as we've kind of done most of the season and going with the Chargers here.
I like what you said, too, by the way, of it's like in baseball where they're like, well, the new year hasn't started until pitchers and catchers report. It's like the playoffs haven't really started until the Texans are getting blown out on a Saturday afternoon game. at least on the West Coast.
This is the second smallest spread of the slate. It's a -2.5 for the Chargers as road favorites. And Welsh, it looks like with your prediction, you've got the Chargers winning too.
Yeah, I like the Chargers in this. I mean, Erickson broke that down great as he always does. But like, I would just simplify it to just be like, CJ Stroud has been fraudulent this year. It's not, if this is the CJ Stroud that we saw last year, the CJ Stroud that we saw in the offseason that would sit with Micah Parsons and break down every player, looks like I want to listen to CJ Stroud talk and break down football all the time. I don't want to watch him play football right now. That's the problem. He does not look like that CJ Stroud that we had all built up for. So it puts it in a really tough situation where it's like, I don't care if it's home road. It doesn't really matter to me. Like he's not been chalk. Like you're betting his overs on interceptions every single game and you're cashing it. The weapons haven't been there. I mean, obviously, like they're a little bit more healthy. You've got Mixon going. You've got Nico getting to go a little bit. But I think the Chargers are just too tough of a team right now. And as they are getting healthy, getting J.K. Dobbins back, the other big thing, and this is true, so my game prediction is Colts are going to win. They're going to cover that 2.5 on the spread. So maybe we can put that as my prediction is they'll cover the spread. But my in-game prediction is going to be around Ladd McConkey. So if you're taking a Mixon under, I love my overs. And I'm going to go with Ladd McConkey over his receiving yard prop, which was early set at 72.5. He's currently set up against the Texans with the second best wide receiver cornerback matchup of the weekend, according to PFF. So you love that. He's hit this yards prop at 72.5 in 6 of his last 7 games. And he has had 6 or more receptions in 5 of his last 7 games. While, by the way, from a target perspective, 18 targets over his last 2 games. So, I mean, he has gone on into overdrive as far as being the guy for this team. And this is how they're going to win. They're going to be getting the ball to Ladd all day. So I love Ladd having a great big day as far as my predictions go, hitting that receiving yard prop and the Chargers covering.
I know typically the format of the show is that I host and you guys give the predictions. I want to throw a prediction out here and see what you guys think of it. It's maybe it is bolder. I'm going to predict that despite this being the second smallest spread of the week, this will be the biggest blowout of wildcard weekend. Will be the Chargers beating the Texans. I think this is the biggest disparity. I don't kind of trust some of the other very large lines that we're going to get to. Some of these other games, particularly in the AFC, I think the biggest blowout of the weekend is Chargers over Texans.
I think this is one of 2 games in play for that. I like a variant of this would be the biggest discrepancy between what the spread is and what the total line finishes at. I think that definitely could have the biggest, widest variance. But yeah, I think this is like one of 2 games where that's in play. I mean, like when the Texans are on, like we know what they can be. Nico can absolutely go off when him and Stroud have that connection, but Stroud has just consistently been on, off. On. And it's just like there isn't like 3 quarters that are even stitched together that look phenomenal like that Stroud of old. So yeah, I think this could go in a really bad direction.
Last note I want to mention when it comes to this Chargers-Texans dynamic, and this is something that kind of went under the radar during the offseason. We all know that the Texans retained Bobby Slowick as the offensive coordinator, but one of the key guys that they lost, who was a senior offensive assistant, quarterbacks coach for the Chargers now, Shane Day. So he actually played a lot. He got a lot of credit last year about CJ Stroud's rookie year emergence. And he'd worked previously with the Chargers with Justin Herbert. And when the Chargers brought him back from Houston, Justin Herbert was really pumped up. So just another element of something to pay attention during the offseason where it's not always the offensive coordinators moving from team to team, but like these quarterback coaches and who is like working day to day with these quarterbacks. So I was going back at some of my old articles from the quarterbacks to avoid, and I talked about Stroud. And that was one of the things I mentioned where, hey, he lost Shane Day. And Shane Day had a lot of success with him his rookie year. He had a lot of success with Herbert. And that's kind of why we see these 2 teams, these 2 quarterbacks kind of go in different directions. Whereas Justin Herbert bounced back after a tough year last season. And obviously we've seen CJ Stroud regress. So I think we're going to kind of just see more of the same here in this matchup.
We've got a special offer for all of you. Unlock a month of Betting Pros Premium for free. Download the Betting Pros app today and use promo code FPFREE to start betting smarter, not harder. Betting Pros Premium gives you exclusive access to cutting-edge tools that take your betting game to the next level. Our same-game parlay tool creates winning parlays with ease. Our prop bet analyzer and Prize Picks prop bet cheat sheet uncovers the picks that provide the most value. Our betting systems allow you to create and even backtest custom strategies that help you find value and maximize your bankroll. So take the guesswork out of betting. Download the Betting Pros app. Use code FPFREE and start winning today. All right, guys, let's get to Steelers Ravens. This line is like one I just frankly do not understand. It's 9.5. The Ravens are laying 9.5, and this is I believe it's the largest spread in the history of this rivalry. I cannot ever remember seeing like a double-digit spread or even close to it in this rivalry. Even when this spread is like 7, I think that's too high for any Steelers Ravens game. And here it is in the playoffs. It's 9.5. Erickson, what is your prediction?
Well, this isn't a prediction because this is going to happen. The Steelers are going to cover. That's lock of the week. Steelers are going to cover this 9.5 spread because I agree with you. I think that it's absolutely egregious.
It's hard for me to not recommend people bet like their whole mortgage on this. Like I do not understand this line.
I mean, look, when we all look up at the score at the end of the game, we'll find out it's probably going to be a lot. It's going to be pretty spot on is what we'll find out. But one team eventually has to cover because especially if it closes at 9.5, there's no push when it comes to 9.5 points. But I like the Steelers side here. But ultimately, I do think that the Ravens pull out the victory, even if it's not by 9.5 points. And I do think the Steelers throw a little bit more at Lamar Jackson. I think he's going to finish under 220 passing yards. Looking at this matchup, we've already seen it twice this season, which goes back to why I just think this line is absolutely bonkers because it was Ravens -7 like 3 weeks ago. And now it's 9.5. Despite the fact the Steelers are playing with 6 or 7 guys that didn't even play in that game. Pickens is back. Joey Porter Jr. is back. A lot of defensive backs and defensive tackles are playing for the Steelers. And you know who the Ravens don't have? Their number 1 Pro Bowl wide receiver, Zay Flowers. He's not going to play in this game. So, again, don't need to go more in depth about the spread and what it is. But Lamar, I think he's going to struggle a little bit here as a passer, as traditionally has been the case with him facing the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Both games this year, exactly 207 passing yards. His prop is at 220.5 passing yards. So I'm going to take the under. He's been under that 3 straight games, 5 of his last 7 contests. And when when the Ravens beat the Steelers the last time they played, who was the big playmaker? It was not Bateman. It was not Andrews. It was Zay Flowers, who is not going to play in this game. So I'm going under on Lamar Jackson passing yards.
I actually like under on his passing prop even more than I like the Steelers plus the points. Like that is another line that makes no sense to me. The Steelers blitzed the Ravens at twice the rate they blitzed anybody else this season in those 2 matchups. And Lamar, when he's blitzed, like Zay Flowers is the outlet. And it's not 100% official that he's not playing, but it looks extremely likely that he's not going to play, at least for this week. I do not, if the Ravens win by 10 or more points, it will be because Derrick Henry blew up. It won't be because Lamar threw for 250 passing yards. So I could not agree with you more, Erickson. I do not get this line at all. Obviously, I hope it's right. As a Ravens fan, that would be delightful. But I am certainly expecting a lower scoring game than the total would suggest. I'm certainly expecting fewer passing yards. Welsh, how do you see this one?
Yeah, and I believe also to throw this in, I believe 4 Lamar Jackson interceptions, half of those came from the Steelers this year. So just to throw that out as well, that doesn't throw a lot of receptions, but sure has against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So yeah, I completely agree with this. Kind of across the board, Ravens win. I think this is way too big of a spread. Obviously, the Ravens are going to want to keep this on the ground as much as they possibly can. When you talk about the outlet, I think that opens up. I guess I've kind of been like an Isaiah Likely guy some this year. We've done it on the prop show. You guys might get more of that, but I think they're going to struggle with a lot more deep ball stuff. But with them holding a lead, and especially in time clock management, I think what that's going to lead to is obviously the Steelers being able to cover is they're going to get back to what they have done early on the year, and they've really lacked success as of recent. It's just slinging the ball, just Russ getting back and slinging it. And that comes to my prop of getting George Pickens back involved in this game. And we're going to go with his longest reception. So this is a very betty, like in the betting show that we would talk about, but you want to hit this, is George Pickens' 23.5 longest reception on the year. Prior to the last game where he just got shut out, he had hit this in 8 straight games. He has had a 30-yard reception or bigger in 8 straight games prior to this. 11 of 14 games this season, he has also just hit that marker. He had 12 targets versus the Ravens in his last outing and had a 37-yard reception. So I think the Steelers are going to be playing from behind in a lot of this, and I think that is going to obviously get them throwing the ball deep. They've got to get Pickens. I mean, I know they can keep doing this game where it's like, oh, Pickens is, he's having this awful game, or they're just moving to other targets. I think the Ravens are going to do a good job of shutting down Pat Freiermuth, who was the outlet passer, and you can throw a bit against the Baltimore Ravens. So I think they're going to do that. You're going to get Pickens back involved. So from a prediction standpoint, it's a very Betty prediction. He's going to go over. He's going to have a big reception in this game. To what capacity it ends up being doesn't matter because we just want 23.5 over. So that's my big George Pickens play. Ravens win. Steelers cover. Pretty chalk.
Yeah, I like the under on 43.5. Also, I will say I do like a lot of Derrick Henry's props. I like over on 99.5 rushing yards. I like over on 5.5 receiving yards for Derrick Henry actually a lot. I also really like plus 400 on the last player to score a touchdown for Derrick Henry. So I like a lot of the props on him. Yeah, the thing is like I have fought back really hard against the Lamar playoff narrative because I think it's entirely without context. He has 4 losses and 3 of them came 4, 5, and 6 years ago in just very different circumstances than he's in now. So I think the playoff stuff with Lamar is really overblown and not. I think it's a mischaracterization of him. I don't think that's true of the Steelers' problems. I think those are very legitimate, and the Steelers just specifically do play him well. Yeah. And I will not be surprised if he struggles in this game. Statistically speaking, I do think they will win ultimately, but yeah, I as I've said a bunch, I don't get this line really at all. So we'll see.
What do you think it should be? What do you think it should be then?
It should be what it was last time. It was -7. That's exactly what it
was.
was
About to say. I was going to say 6.5.
Yeah, there's no difference between the Steelers are putting out a better roster than they did in that game, and the Ravens are putting out a worse roster than they did.
The other thing too is in that game, people go, "Oh, well, the Ravens blew him out." That was a 1-score game with the Steelers having the ball before the pick 6 from Marlon Humphrey. That is what turned the game and made it look like a blowout. It was not a blowout in that. The Ravens also recovered a bunch of fumbles in that game too. That helped.
And they also fumbled the ball 3 times. They didn't.
Yes.
They didn't turn over the ball. And I wrote this all down for the betting pro. I'm looking right at it right now. So the game was tied 17-all with 5 minutes left remaining in the third quarter. And Chris Boswell, after the Steelers scored a touchdown, kicked the ball out of bounds. And then the Ravens got a short field, scored a touchdown, pick 6. Good night. And then that was it.
I'm very confident.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just say if this is 6.5. Are you betting on the Ravens? If this is -6, 6.5, are you going Ravens and you taking?
I think 6.5 is the right line. I think that when you said that, I was like, that is the correct line in my mind because that is the line at which I don't know what direction I would go. I would probably take the Steelers, honestly. Just I think it's smart, just historically looking at this rivalry, to just blindly, if a team is getting over 4.5 points, just take the underdog in this rivalry. They're almost always going to cover. And again, I think people are overreacting to the last game. To Erickson's point, this is a healthier Steelers team than they were in that game. And the Ravens are more depleted. Not having Zay Flowers is a huge deal. And again, I still think the Ravens will win. I would love nothing more than to be wrong and to see them blow out their bitter rival. But it's really hard for me to play out the scenario where that actually happens.
Well, considering my prediction is that the Ravens are going to win, I mean, well, we know what my predictions have been on this show. So.
Yeah, what the hell, Erickson? Come on, help me out here. We're talking about NFL playoffs. You bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is key to winning in the NFL playoffs, and the key to you scoring big is betting on them at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score 6. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. We've got an awesome slate for Wild Card Weekend. A couple of close games projected, also some intriguing projected blowouts. We just talked about Ravens-Steelers. That should always be fun, even in the playoffs with a big spread. The Broncos are playing as well as anyone, despite being 8.5-point underdogs in Buffalo. The other games all have smaller spreads, but we get some really fun QB matchups. We talked about Herbert Stroud, Love Hurts, Baker Daniels. Lines and odds are subject to change, but this Wild Card Weekend looks like a ton of fun. Here's another reason to watch your favorite players crush it in the playoffs. New customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. So score big during the NFL playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Guys, what would you set the under over at the amount of times they're going to play the Love Hurts song during that Packers-Eagles game?
Love hurts. 6.5.
It's a good line. It's a pretty good line. I think maybe they go the over.
Let's go to Broncos Bills. This is another one. This one I'm more understanding of what the line is, like just given kind of where these teams are at, and there's less of a history here than with Ravens Steelers. Having said that, like the Broncos, I do think are playing well, even though it came against the backups in Week 18. So I do think this number's a little high. It's 8.5 for in favor of the Bills. Erickson, what's your prediction on this one?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised too that it's this big, but I think it's just the market love for the Buffalo Bills, and they are looking at hey, it's still a rookie quarterback making his first playoff start on the road in a hostile environment. So I think that's kind of the reason why you're not getting as much love on the Denver side. And that's kind of the game script I'm projecting here. I'm projecting the Buffalo Bills to be playing here with a strong lead, and that leads me to taking the under on, I know he's a favorite of us, Worm, and actually Welsh as well. Welsh was the guy that was first pounding the first under Welsh ever took was on Audric Estime, which he was right. And I'm going to chase I'm going to follow him here. Audric Estime is going to finish with under 6.5 carries against the Buffalo Bills. So last week, Estime had like the perfect game script. They're blowing out the backup teams. He had 12 carries for 34 yards, scored a touchdown, but still operating behind Jaleel McLaughlin as the number one running back when it comes to working on early downs. And then Javonte Williams is kind of the running back that's sprinkling on third downs and passing situations. So in this game with their massive underdogs, I expect Javonte Williams potentially lead the team in snaps because I think he's going to be running the most routes out of the backfield. And with Estime, what his usage was in Week 18, he saw 6 of his 12 carries in the Broncos' final drive in the fourth quarter when the game was already well out of reach. I mean, the Chiefs had their 4 stringers in at that point. During the first 3 quarters of the game, McLaughlin had 14 carries. Estime had 2. He had 2 carries in the first 3 quarters of the game where they were blowing out the team the entire time. So he didn't get until straight up garbage time. So 6.5 carries in a game where I don't expect him to be playing with a lead at any point potentially. That's how I feel really confident about the usage here. So during, projecting this Broncos backfield has always been really tough. So I'm going to, the one time it's worked out has been hitting on the under where Welsh was just so spot on with it. And it just went against everything in his being to take an under, but he did it so accurately. So that stays in my mind. And that's why I'm going here with this. So I'm going to take the under here because again, before the fourth quarter of last week's game, he was sitting on 2 carries for 4 yards. So against the Bills, that's going to be no bueno. So under 6.5 carries for Estime.
What do you think about this one, Welsh?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I kind of like that one as well. It's a low, scary number, but I like that on Estime. I think this is going to be one of the blowout situations. Like, I think the Bills are going to blow out the Broncos in this situation. And coming back to what you're talking about with Estime, I think that's part of the problem. And first off, just the Bills offense. The Bills offense in general, James Cook, your running back touchdown leader, Josh Allen, this bevy of wide receivers. It's funny because it's like the Broncos do a version of what the Bills do. The Bills just slang it to a bunch of different receivers. They just do it really well. The Broncos are okay with it. I think everything is going to click on the Broncos side or the Bills side. The Broncos, they don't have a running game, and I think that is going to hurt them. Obviously, the rookie quarterback situation is going to be in play here. So I think the Bills are going to blow the Broncos out in this situation. So that is my game script here, where if I had to bet on one game where it's going to go in this direction, this is going to be the game, because if Josh Allen can't sling the ball, this team breaks off huge, big runs. It's not like they're going to have some clock management where it's like, all right, 4 yard, 3 yard, boom, we've just killed 6 minutes. Like, no, they'll break up 50-yard touchdowns. The next thing you know, it's 21-0 in the second quarter, and they've thrown the ball 3 times. And I don't think the Broncos have the pass wherewithal to be able to make up for that against the Bills, and they don't have a running game that's going to be able to chalk in, I think, really easy first downs, like 3rd and 3 or anything like that. And that comes to where my prop is going to come into play, that I'm going to come back in or prop is in a prediction of a player bet here. It's Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is going to be running again. He was running early on in the year. Then it just vanished. He just stopped running. And then all of a sudden, over the last month or so, it's back. He started running again. 23.5 is his rushing yard prop in this game. I think he might smash this, to be honest with you. He's hit this in 3 of his last 4 games. Bills, by the way, are giving up right around 5 yards per carry to quarterbacks on the year, even though they haven't given up these big, huge games. Nix, on those 5 yards per carry, has had 7 or more rushes in 3 of his last 4 games. And I think he is going to be the guy that's going to be doing that running. He's going to be the guy that has that quick setback and boom, he's going to hit the middle. They don't have much of a running game. Don't be surprised when Bo Nix has more carries than Audric Estime in this game. So I like him from that betting perspective to hit those rushing yards. And I really do think the Bills are probably going to beat up on the Broncos.
I think my approach in thinking about this game is that if you set aside the quarterbacks, which obviously won't be the case in the real game, like there is a very wide gap between Josh Allen and Bo Nix. But if you set aside the quarterbacks, I think these teams are like largely like pretty even. I think the Broncos have the better defense. I don't think the gap in sort of offensive talent around the quarterback is that wide. I'm not even sure which head coach I'd rather have. I think it's probably Sean Payton of the two, which I wouldn't have said a year ago, but I think he's really bounced back really well. And I'm just not convinced that the gap between Josh Allen and Bo Nix is alone, if you think the rest of it is fairly close, is worth the 8.5. But it wouldn't totally stun me if this ended up being a blowout.
Yeah, only thing I would throw out,
I think go nuclear.
I think you give me any Bills running back, just name Tyler Johnson, Ray Davis, better than any Broncos running back. So all 3 of the running backs are better than any singular running back that they've got. So the running game's not even remotely close. Maybe it's closer when you're talking about the pieces. Maybe it's closer in the wide receiver core. Maybe like Cortland Sutton individually is probably like the best wide receiver here, but then it's just a bunch of pieces. Like Vele can be fun. Marvin Mims has obviously been fun. But I mean, you look at the Bills and it's like Amari Cooper, leadership, Keon Coleman, insane great athleticism, Khalil Shakir. I don't think it's particularly super close on the wide receivers. I don't think the running backs are remotely close. Offensive line on the Bills. So I know what you're saying here. Defensively, I'll take the Broncos, but I don't think there's any other piece that I would have even probably in the same territory, Broncos to Bills, but I might be wrong. This is a big spread. This might be some foolish one.
I think I see it a little closer than you do in terms of the offensive like support system around the quarterbacks. I do agree the Bills is better, but I think the gap between the defenses is wider in favor of the Broncos than the offenses, aside from the quarterback, is in favor of the Bills. But I do think it's close. Anyway, my ultimate point is that I don't know that the difference between Josh Allen and Bo Nix like makes up for how close I see the rest of it. In terms of this widespread. Do you think the
Bills put up 30 points? Because they do. Yeah, I know you do, Welsh. Or do you think that? So they do. Like that's where I see the Broncos running into issues. I don't think they're going to win a shootout.
I don't think they score 30.
Okay.
I think they score high 20s. Like I think this is good. This is a game that's going to be played in the mid to high 20s. But
that's their path to keeping this close. Yes, they got to keep it under 30
for sure. And this is not one that I'm like stopping my foot and like planting my flag. Like the Broncos are definitely covering or anything like that.
Well, you do live in Denver. So.
I was just about to say, Worm does live in Colorado, so I think it's like a little closer to your heart.
My Bo Nix jersey.
Yeah, you're a little close. You're a Ravens fan through and through, but like I'm in here in Arizona. If the Arizona Cardinals were in the play, I'd be smashing them. I hate the Cardinals here, but I feel like you got a little bit of love for the Broncos.
So many people asked me when I moved to Denver, "Are you going to become a Broncos fan?" I was like, "Are you going to become?" No, like they're not in the same. They're in the same conference as the Ravens. I would never root for them over the Ravens, like in a playoff matchup or anything like that. It's like not even close, but. We'll see how this one plays. I'm actually really excited for this game. Like, I know it's a big spread, but it's one of the games I'm most looking forward to watching this weekend. So we'll see how that one plays out. Let's go to the NFC matchups. For whatever reason, the NFL had the 3 AFC matchups first, and then NFC. Welsh, we'll start with you on this one. Packers, Eagles. What's your prediction here?
So my big prediction overall is actually not going to center around a player. I think the Eagles are going to win this one, but the biggest prediction, I'm going to play to the under. I think the under is in play for this. It actually moved up a half a point. It was like 45 like a day ago. It's gone to 45.5. And part of my problem with this has been the stuttering of both of these offenses. On paper, this is a great game. You know, the version of the Packers that's in our brain from earlier in the season, great game. But that Packer team is not there right now. I mean, we saw this on display at the back half of this year where all of a sudden Jordan Love, they don't seem to have the same confidence every single week in Jordan Love to be slinging the ball. They've really, really pushed to running the ball more. They lost Christian Watson as a big down the field guy. So I'm worried about whatever is going on with Jordan Love. I'm worried about them being down one of those pieces in Christian Watson that spreads the ball really deep. People have been targeting out, you can see on Twitter, it's like the top two dropped passes wide receivers are Dobbs and Wicks right now. I mean, they're like the dynamic duo of dropped passes. Jayden Reed hasn't been involved. It's Josh Jacobs. So what I'm getting at is like this team, I don't think even has a dimension where we then go back to the Eagles and what do we say pretty much through like 12 weeks for the Eagles? We're like, well, they're one-dimensional. They have Saquon Barkley and they haven't been able to pass. Okay, maybe that has, rectified itself a little bit, but you've got this injured Jalen Hurts, and like what, obviously, like I think he's going to play, but the status has been in question. But their passing game puts us in question. So let's bring it all back. Both of these teams are going to establish a win on the ground. Both of these defenses too are top 6 in least points given up per game. So these are good defenses overall that are going to halt down the passing game. Their offenses are going to keep it on the ground. Yes, they may score some points and they may be able to drive the ball. Saquon Barkley, the best running back in the league. Josh Jacobs was phenomenal. But I really do think there's an opportunity that both of these teams are going to kill a lot of clock. You might have a couple drives that are going to stall because we know the Packers aren't going to be throwing the ball super deep, and there's been big inefficiencies from Jordan Love. So at the end of the day, I want to play the under on this game. And frankly, this is very betting pros here, but like a little teaser of the under of this game and the Ravens game is calling to me and screaming to me, because that tease would then mean the points would go up and you'd have both of these games to score under 50. I think that's in play. Obviously on paper, the Eagles and Packers looks like it could be this explosive, big output of offense. I just don't think it is with stingier defenses and teams that have been thriving keeping the ball on the ground. So I'm going to play the under, but I do think that at the end of the day, the Eagles are going to run away with this.
I didn't mention this, by the way, but the spread in this one is 4.5. Eagles laying 4.5. Jalen Hurts is practicing today on Wednesday, the day we're recording this. We'll see kind of how that continues to play out. The talk has been seemingly very likely that he will be playing in this game as he comes back from concussion protocol. So Erickson, Welsh likes the under. Do you agree with that, or do you prefer the over?
I do not prefer the over. No, I think that Welsh laid it out perfectly. There are two defenses that are good, and they want to run the football, right? Those are just trends that scream towards, hey, this game is going to go under. You're going to totally see these Eagles come out flat because Jalen Hurts has missed so much time, and the Eagles' offense has been bad in the first halves of games anyway. So it would not surprise me at all if people start freaking out when the Packers jump out to a lead and they end up losing in the end because the Eagles are playing at home. I think the Eagles always kind of right the ship in the second half anyway, but I think the under is definitely the play here. This game to me screams 23-20. Like that score is just kind of in my mind. Like, yes, it'll get up over 40 points, but eventually it just won't get there. As like you're going to be sweating the under at the end of the game. Welsh, like you're in the first half, you're going to be like, all right, I'm ready.
10-3 in the first half. Packers 10-3, and I'm just like, all right, I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's going to be like, like you're saying, 20. It'll be tied up at 20 into the fourth quarter with 5 minutes left.
Yeah. So I think this game, I think the Packers are live here to cover the 4.5 points because I don't know, man. They play good in postseason games. Like last year, right? They were 7-point underdogs against the Cowboys. They won that game. And then they were 10-point underdogs against the 49ers, and they almost won that game. They ended up losing by a field goal. But I don't know, Jordan Love he finds a way in the playoffs. So I do think they're going to cover here, but I think the Eagles pull it out. But kind of going off of the under of the points, I'm going under on Jordan Love in the passing yards. So 227.5 passing yards. So he's been under this number in 3 straight games, 5 of his last 7 games played. That's just not including last week where he only played half the game. And we just look at the Eagles all season long. This has been one of the best bets to make. Just take the under on the passing yards, whoever is facing the Philadelphia Eagles. Since their bye week, only 2 quarterbacks have gone over their passing yards projection, Lamar Jackson and Jayden Daniels. Those are the only 2 guys that have been able to do it. So, and then when you take out Christian Watson out of the consideration of receivers to throw to, Love is 3-7 towards the under, going under his passing yards prop with Christian Watson, so 30%. And over the last 2 seasons, when he's been on the road, he's only hit the over on his passing yards projection 1 time without Christian Watson in the lineup. So, yes, can they replace Watson's production? Maybe with these other receivers, but considering all the drops it's not a good bet to make. Hey, this is going to be the game where he can throw for 300 passing yards. Not without Christian Watson. It's even more unlikely that's going to happen. So kind of parlaying the under in the game total, it probably means you're going to see less passing yards overall. So I like the under on Jordan Love.
I know I've made a couple of like predictions of the the team that's getting points covering already. This is the game where I think the upset could actually happen. Like I could see that. I would predict the Eagles to win, but it would not shock me if the Packers did. Like, it's really hard to forget how awesome they looked in their 2 playoff games last year, to your point, Erickson. And the Eagles like haven't had Hurts for a couple of weeks. Maybe there's some rust there. So if I had
Hurts
to pick
is also
one
hit away from like being out of the game again.
Yeah.
And then that team becomes again back to that one-dimensional side. I agree with you on this too. Again, very betting prosy, but like this, what did you say, 4.5 right now? Like,
yeah,
that's a prime Packers teaser number if I've ever seen it, because that would get your Packers to plus 10.5. And that's exactly what you would want. You would want to get over one of those markers, those key indicators of betting, like that 7. If a team was minus 1.5 or plus 1.5, and you could tease them down, that would go over a touchdown. This would be over a touchdown and a field goal. So I agree with you. Packers are in play for this on the spread, and probably like one of those tease pieces. I would not be shocked if the Packers walked away with this, especially though this would have to kind of counter, I think, what Erickson is talking about. Jordan Love is going to have to be like that big, spectacular Jordan Love, where they're slinging the ball and, they're fine. Jayden Reed just like comes alive. The Undertaker meme, just, whoa, he's just back and he comes alive. Like, they would need to have big plays, but I think that's the problem of what has gone away. Play calling doesn't seem to trust him. But if they win this game, to me, this is him smashing all of that. He's going over 300 yards. He's having 3 touchdowns. Like, he's blowing them up in the air.
If you want a chance to win a signed TJ Hockenson Vikings helmet for free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com, all you need to do is head to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either download the Fantasy Pros My Playbook app, leave a review for the podcast, or follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more entries you receive. We'll be announcing a winner right here on the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. All right. Commanders, Buccaneers. Welsh, what's your prediction here?
I first think that this will be the best game of the weekend. This is the one I'm looking most forward to. Buccaneers, obviously, I think are a super scary team with what they've been able to do in the passing game. Their running game is super scary. Defensively, we'll kind of see where that goes. But from a game perspective, I kind of don't want to give you like who's going to win this game. I want to say this will be the best game of all of them. And my favorite from a prediction standpoint is betting on Bucky, which, by the way, I do think the Commanders can win this game. I'm going to lean on the Buccaneers here, and I'm going to lean on Bucky, as I think they will as well. Bucky is going to go over 100 on the ground and hit a touchdown, and that's actually something from a pure betting perspective I'm going to parlay together. So go Bucky plus 100 and a touchdown, get you 2-1 on your money. Bucky has had 15 to 20 carries per game over the last month, and that was always the big early season thing. It was like, God, we love Bucky. He's crazy. But it's like, I need more than 12 carries and then 2 catches. And that's ended up happening. He's getting 20 touches per game. Washington is giving up the 4th most rushing yards to running backs on the year and 6th most rushing yards over the last month. Jayden Daniels is going to keep them in the game the whole time. And that's why I think this game can be so great. They got Eckler back. They've got an established running game. They've got the passing game, and they've got Jayden Daniels. But if you can definitively tell me who the best quarterback in this matchup is, good on you, because Baker's been great, but so is Daniels. So where's the big defining factor here? And I think it is in the Buccaneers can run the ball at a very high level, and Washington gives up a lot on the rushing side. So I think that's where the Buccaneers are going to be able to take over from this. And I think Bucky is going to have a very big established game. Hopefully Mike Evans is back from the casino, and there's no incentives that he can pout about that he doesn't hit into the playoffs. But we're not going to worry about any of that. We're just going to play on Bucky. So this will be the best game, maybe the game we're talking about the most coming off of the weekend is that prediction, and Bucky Irving, 100 rushing with a touchdown.
Erickson, I'm curious to get your opinion both on Bucky Irving in this matchup, but also Welsh's call that this will be the game of the weekend.
I agree. I think that this is the game where you don't bet the sides, bet the total, take the over, have some fun. Have some fun on Sunday Night Football, root for both quarterbacks, just ball out, points galore. That's how you want to approach this game. Because I think that, like Welsh said, it's tight spread for a reason. Field goal, two offenses that are very explosive, have dynamic weapons. So you're not going to feel good about that ticket when you have two teams that rank respectively top 3 in points scored, efficiency, all in the fourth quarter. So your team may be winning entering the fourth quarter. It's not safe because that lead's going to flip and flop. So just take the points here. And to that point as well, maybe this should have been my prediction that the game's just going to go over 50.5 points. The Buccaneers have played 8 games this year where the spread has been 4.5 points or less. So whether they've been favored by 4.5 points or underdogs by 4.5 points, 8 games, all overs. Every single one has gone over the total. So when they play in games that we're projecting to be tight or back and forth in any capacity, it is back and forth. So I'm expecting points here, and that's why I love the Jayden Daniels prop. So over on his passing yards, we know the Buck. This is rinse and repeat with Todd Bowles' defense since he entered the league, right? Stuff to run, throw all over us, and I think that's what you're going to see from Jayden Daniels. Like he's going to throw and he's going to run, and him and Terry McLaurin. I think this could be like a monster game for McLaurin. So I'll just take the over on his receiving yards prop, 60 receiving yards against the Buccaneers. And Daniels has gone over his passing yards prop in 3 straight games. So look, he had the second half off of last week. They didn't play him because he was Dallas's pass rush was getting after him real quick. So they're like, all right, let's take him out of the game. Get ready for a game that actually matters. So I think that he's just going to just completely ball out in this game. I don't know if they're going to end up winning. I think it's going to be, honestly, it might come down to whoever has the possession last that wins this game. But it's going to be a shootout, and I expect the offensive rookie of the year to ball out and McLaurin to be his number 1 guy.
Was this the right game for Sunday Night Football? Like
yes.
When building the schedule?
Yeah. I think the schedule makers did it right.
Like the Houston game in Saturday afternoon, obvious. And then you have to end with the 4-5 game on Monday. So there's only other 4-5 game. So that was obvious as well. I thought Broncos Bills was very clearly like the Sunday afternoon. That's just what it felt like. The other 3 I could have seen kind of being rotated in any order between Saturday night, Sunday late afternoon, and Sunday night. I like the schedule we got, but I this was the one where I was surprised to see it in Sunday Night Football. Honestly, I love it, but
yeah, the only adjustment I would make looking at this schedule is I would put Packers and Eagles on Monday. And I know it might be like a seeding thing, that's fine, but like I would rather watch the Packers and Eagles on Monday to finish off the playoffs because of like how that game could go. But otherwise, like I'm fine with this. I think this is going to be like on paper, maybe it doesn't look you're like Commanders and Bucks. It's going to be like the best. We're gonna love having that game there.
Yeah, they do have to do the 4-5 game on Monday. I actually wish we didn't have a Monday game. Like I prefer 3 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and nothing on Monday. But if they have to do it this way, spread out over 3 days, like this is a pretty great.
But you got to remember, there's one thing. I've done this before, so apologies. But Worm, NFL, cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money. Monday.
I get why they do it. I just don't like it. Let's go to that Vikings-Rams game. Last game on the slate. Welsh, we'll start with you again. What is your prediction for Vikings-Rams? And by the way, just because I keep forgetting to say it, this is a 1.5 point spread. Vikings are laying 1.5 on the road, and the total is 47.5.
I think the Vikings might tear this up. I think they might end up tearing this up, and I know why this spread is there. And obviously, the Rams have hit a stride, and they've offensively, you've got Kupp, you've got Puka, you've got the pieces that you need. Vikings played down, especially last week. It looked really bad with Darnold. I think this is going to be rectified. I think the Vikings are going to cover. Love the spread. Anything under 3 makes me feel a lot better. But Vikings win. They cover this spread. And in the player prediction market of my actual predictions, Justin Jefferson's going to have a big game. He got shut out in that last one. His reception yard prop is what I'm targeting. It's at 6.5. 9 or more targets he has seen in 4 straight games. They cooked him in that last outing, as I mentioned. I believe he had 9 targets, only 3 catches. But he had hit this reception yard prop in 5 straight games prior to that last game. He hit this also in the previous matchup against the Lions. So they are going to be hot and heavy, getting the ball to Justin Jefferson. I don't know why Darnold didn't want to look at Jordan Addison. Maybe they'll rectify that. Wide open in the end zone. Don't worry about it. It's going to be all Justin Jefferson, though. And I do think this team is going to be able to find a much bigger success of throwing the ball. So I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson over 6.5 receptions. By the way, I think I mentioned the last note I wrote incorrectly. I said he hit this in the last outing. I was referring to the Lions in that. I don't know why I did that. But 5 straight games of hitting this reception yard prop. He's smashing this one. So give me Justin Jefferson over 6.5.
Erickson, what do you think about Jefferson in this one? 6.5 receptions, 90.5 is the receiving yards line. First touchdown score plus 650. Any of these stand out to you?
I mean, going back to Justin Jefferson, I think after a bad game makes a ton of sense. Wide receiver production tends to be up and down. And it's funny because when you look at Justin Jefferson's final counting stats this year, because he didn't really have any of those really marquee, absolute like Jamar Chase blow up games, he had like 1,500 receiving yards. He was fine. Like he was totally good. He was all set. And that's coming off with that week 18 dud too. So yeah, I think it's fun to bet overs when they're not totally like out of control on elite players, right? Like it's fun to bet overs on Justin Jefferson because he's nasty and he could do this in the first half. So especially against the Rams defense that's been terrible in the secondary all year long. If they try to do what the Lions did to the Vikings offense, I just don't think it's going to work. I don't think you're going to see the Rams try to we'll just do man coverage. It'll be great. Like it'll be fine. We'll just blitz. Maybe it works. I mean, Darnold's going to bounce back. I mean, he's not going to complete under 50% of his passes for the second straight game. It just all eyes were on Darnold and he just totally just failed to live up to the expectation, but he gets another shot at it here in the playoffs. So I think we're going to see a bounce back effort from him. And also the thing is, the Rams offense hasn't nearly looked as good either, but they just rested their guys last week. So we're going to get to see Matthew Stafford kind of struggle, which has kind of been his case in the Rams offense over the last couple of weeks.
So what's your prediction in this one then?
Going back to the Rams offense, right? Matthew Stafford under 230.5 passing yards. So he's under 240 passing yards in 4 of his last 5 games. And this is the trend that I'm looking at, and I ignored when Welsh and I were all over the Jordan Love props against the Minnesota Vikings, that the Minnesota Vikings defense and Brian Flores has done a wonderful job in terms of rematches. So when I look at the quarterbacks that have faced the Vikings, 5 of the last 8 quarterbacks who have faced the Vikings have exceeded their passing yards prop by an average of almost 100 passing yards. So you might think, wait, I thought you want to take the under on Matthew Stafford. I do. Because when you look at the quarterbacks that have not exceeded their passing yards projection, they're all the quarterbacks that was the rematch. The second time they played the Minnesota Vikings. Caleb Williams, under second time. Jordan Love, under second time. Jared Goff, under second time. Rams Vikings is a rematch from week 8. Matthew Stafford, under. Second time against the Minnesota Vikings. So I'm trusting the process here with Brian Flores, trusting his defense to make adjustments and slow down this Rams passing attack, which has become Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, which it's not good.
Puka,
and more Puka.
Welsh, what do you think about the Stafford prop here?
Yeah, I'm absolutely with this one. Like I think this is a team that's going to have to establish as best as possible on the ground with Kyren Williams. I don't know if it's going to be big play stuff. One of the themes too, just to throw out with the Vikings that I just remember from like whatever it was, week 2 or 3 when the 49ers were getting trounced by the Vikings was like everyone's talked about schemes. Like the defensive schemes that the Vikings have put together have really put weight on quarterbacks and, just bracketing coverages and stuff like that. So I'm with this one. The only caveat would be I'm open to this game also blowing up, like in favor of the Vikings. And if that happens, that's then going to put the Rams in a situation where they're going to be constantly throwing the ball. And if you put enough volume on that, I think there could be maybe a little bit of a problem with it. What was the number again on Stafford?
So 235 and a half.
Oh, man. And that's a lot. They want you to smash the over on that too. Oh my God. You see that? Like a playoff game Rams, they want you to smash that over. That's like a warning sign. But I love the breakdown, especially the after game, the rematch coverage of what Erickson's with. So I'm with this one because I do think this is an all Vikings game.
Yeah, it's funny. The 2, 4, 5 games, which theoretically should be close, are the 2 that I feel best about, like a blowout. Like I really think Vikings could like just completely dominate the Rams, and like I said at the beginning, I think the Chargers could dominate the Texans. So.
This might be one of those things too, where we're like, we come off of the high of this great Sunday night game, and we're like, oh my God, football's awesome, and then Monday we're just like, it's the suckiest game, and we're just like, this is stupid. Like you turn it off in the third quarter, Vikings are up, 30-3, and it's like one of those classic letdown games. Don't be surprised if that happens as well.
We'll see how it goes. Really excited for the slate. I'm even more excited for what basically no matter who wins these games, the divisional round is going to be awesome. So I'm really excited for the next 2 weekends. Like I said at the top of the show, we'll wrap up there. Hopefully we did pretty well in these predictions. We'll see how we do. And we will be back next week to try again at the divisional round. For Erickson and Welsh, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week.